Hey guys, good morning. Happy Friday. It is already Friday, February 9th. Fire Fridays with Dave, talking about agent attraction at eXp Realty. And super pumped to have you guys here with us because if you don't already know Hank the Tank, then buckle up, get ready. I'm so pumped that Hank is here with us today. Hank and I have been buddies for a long time. Gosh, we go way back. And have known each other from previous companies and have worked together on all kinds of different things. And Hank possesses the rare combination of a doer slash driver and an analytic thinker. And that's a dangerous person, dangerous in a good way, because some people are just ready, fire, aim, right, or just fire, 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 and they go off and do it, and they get stuff done, but they usually work harder than they need to, as far as getting the results they want. Some people think about it all day long and don't ever get it done. But if you have someone who goes and assesses and then goes and assesses and goes and assesses, you're constantly getting better and sharper, and your actions are getting more efficient and effective. And Hank's that kind of guy. So he has taught a lot of people how to achieve what he's achieved, and he still is. So Hank, my man, thank you for being here, brother. We're excited to learn from you.
I appreciate that introduction. And I wasn't always that way. It came from necessity. And when I say necessity, my son was born and he had to have open heart surgery. And I was in that hamster wheel where I thought I had a business. And I think I had 20 listings at the time. And what happened was I had the choice each day of either going to the NICU, an hour and a half away, or going to work. And I drew a line in the sand on that day. I was going to figure out how, when the next time my family gets punched in the jaw, I don't have to make decisions based on taking care of them financially. And it was a long journey to get there. Yet when my father-in-law, who lives next door and was my best friend, went into hospice, I was able to make the decisions to help him cross over the Rainbow Bridge. And it didn't put my family in financial harm's way because we made some strategic moves to not be trading dollars for hours for all of our income. And it made all the difference in the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, my definition of freedom, when it pertains to kind of business life, financial and all that kind of stuff, is being able to make the decisions that you want to make without first having to check your bank account for permission, right? And that to me has been the key. There's lots of other things that come into play, but how many times do we do something or not do something because our bank account doesn't allow it? And if you're not living your life, you're not making your choices, you're not being who you are. Like, one of the things, like, there's some causes you really care about and your heart is to give to that charity or that cause or that person or whatever. You got a friend who goes through a hardship or family member and your heart is to go support them, but your bank account doesn't have the funds to go do it, and where would you put your time and your energy if you could, kind of a thing. So you have been really purposeful about doing that for your family, and it shines through really loud and clear.
Well, and I appreciate that, and it means a lot to acknowledge that. So I was thinking about today's call, and it's funny. I get a lot of opportunities like this, but for some reason, I was even more excited about this and a little bit nervous too because of the amount of respect that I have for you, Dave. So I'd like to just jump in with some modalities that have helped me for some real tactical stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Go for it. And do you need to share? Is there anything? Do you need a co-host?
Maybe at some point. Yeah.
Right,
First thing is, I'd like everybody to ask themselves this question: is, do you have an income problem? And most of the people that I run with, they know how to make money. They establish what is that income number that you want, and they go and get it. So first thing is, do you have an income problem? And I think for most of us, it's a no. And if you do, establish what that number is, where you're going to freeze your lifestyle. Because one of the challenges that I've seen with people is what they do is they reach a certain income and then they raise their lifestyle, but then they run into the next part of the equation, which is cash flow. Who besides me has ever had a cash flow challenge? And so, and if you've ever experienced a cash flow challenge, the reality of that is you make decisions differently when cash flow is in jeopardy. So once you don't have an income problem, I'm going to ask that you figure out what it is for you to solve that cash flow problem for the last time. I remember sitting in marriage therapy one day and we were 12 minutes into the session and my wife was talking about a $20 t-shirt. And I go, Jeff, do you have any idea how much money we make? And he goes, no, I think you do pretty well. I go, we've made 400 grand this year. And yet this is what I'm trying to not deal with, because that's not the right word. That sounds demeaning. And he goes, yeah. I go, my wife's answer is always more, but the challenge is more is never enough. So between my wife and I communicating, what we realized was $50,000 sitting in our money market account through the tax filter allowed her to breathe and feel secure, because what would happen was she was always moving that goalpost where more. And I felt like I could never get there. So one of the things that I'm going to ask that you do is, once you don't have an income problem, figure out what solves your cash flow problem so you can make decisions in longer term increments. I can always tell where someone is on their wealth journey based on how far out they can make decisions based on cash flow. So for example, I think that a safe estimate is 6 to 12 months. When you have that 6 to 12 months, now you can start making longer term decisions. And part of this whole equation is you've got to know your numbers. So a lot of my coaching principles have been tattooed on me. So it's math versus drama. We have the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. Who do you think would win the game if one coach knew what quarter they were in, they knew the score, they knew where they were on the field, and they had all of that data, versus the other coach that knew none of that data? Which one would you bet your money on? The one that had the data. Yet real estate agents, oftentimes what they're doing is they're trying to make calls of the plays that they're going to run, but they have no idea where they are in the game. So one of the things that I found has really helped people is you can't out earn stupid, and start learning your numbers. And there's two words that you might want to write down: grow up. So oftentimes I hear, well, hey, numbers aren't my thing, or taxes aren't my thing. I've got people for that. Brendan Bouchard says you can't leverage what you don't understand. So one of the things I work with when we first started, is getting their balance sheet, meaning you've got your assets and you've got your liabilities, to see if we can make some chess moves to free up your cash flow so that you can make decisions in longer term horizons. Any questions so far? Does everybody have that to this point? Looks like we have it to this point, so I'm going to keep going.
Cool. Yeah. And you guys, you can throw stuff in chat, and Hank, I'll help throw stuff to you if things pop up in chat that look pertinent to where you're going.
Okay, perfect. So once we don't have an income problem, then we solve our cash flow problem. We get to referee our life. And referee is an acronym for relationships, energy, and finances. So what we've got to do is we've got to pick our team. After I won a national championship, I went home and I started buying rental properties. Well, I had a certain team to win a national championship, but when I went and bought rental properties, who thinks that I needed different players on that team in order to go win that next segment of life? So what happened was I started with a clean bench. And what I had to do is I had to go fill my team. Now, it's arguably who the best quarterback is, and I'm going to go on the football theme because of the Super Bowl. We'd all agree that Tom Brady is at least in that discussion. Now, there's 11 players that are on the football field, and one would say, well, if Tom Brady is the best, we want 11 Tom Bradys. That's not the case, because as good as Tom Brady is, he's not going to be blocking the other 11 people that are coming over. So one thing I want you to establish is, what is your next goalpost? What is your next goal? And do you have the right team in order to reach that? So I broke down some numbers because I remember sitting in our old mentor's office, Dinah Kokoska's office, and she took a call. So I'm trying to act important and busy. So I'm on Facebook and I saw that someone's dad died. Now, having lost one of my dads last year, it rocked my world. I mean, grief is a completely different emotion that I haven't dealt with and am learning about. Well, the extent of my emotion when I saw this Facebook friend's dad died was a sad face. And I thought, what the heck is wrong with me? See, Facebook has led us to believe that we can have 5,000 friends, yet you can't have 5,000 friends. Would we all agree with that statement? So I started getting analytical, Dave, and I started researching, well, how many relationships can you actually facilitate where they're actually a relationship? And the people smarter than me came up with 120. And 120 is where you can just see somebody and you know, based on their energy that they're displaying, if something's going on. Who has the type of relationship where you can just see them, you can see their Facebook algorithm change? I checked in with a buddy this morning and I was like, hey man, something's different. Let's check in. Like, I just have that feeling because he's a close enough relationship where I know something's off. It doesn't mean that it's negative, could be for the positive. So we broke this down. 120 relationships. And I believe that the most profitable real estate model is 36 deals. So here's my simple thinking. If I had 36 A's and I helped them reach their goals, I cared about them, all of them should be able to do one real estate deal with you or refer someone in a headlock referral to be able to do 36 deals. Then from there, I took 120 minus 36, and I didn't like that number. And I like 96 because I like sixes. My wife was 6 in sports. I was 6 in sports. And the opposite of 96 is a little bit funny and a little bit immature. So some of you will laugh at that. Some of you will get it later. Yet, so here's what I do is I look at my team and I say, I've got to have 36 A's and 96 B's. And then I look where my gaps are. Now you might be thinking, okay, Hank, how does this equate with revenue share? Because that's why we're here about this call, is about attraction. Well, here's the thing. If you have 36 days that are just family, chances are you're going to be struggling with real estate or your business of choice. So we've got to have a blend based on the season that you're in. Everybody tracking with me so far? So here's what we got to do. We referee our life. When a relationship asks something, like Dave's a relationship of mine. We've had a long time together. Dave asked for something, I'm going to say yes. After I have that exchange with him, I check my energy. And here's one thing I know with Dave. My energy is always higher after talking with him. So he's a relationship. My energy is always better. So I don't have to worry about the finances because I'm not stupid. One of my business mentors said, Excel spreadsheets ruin businesses, but I think Excel spreadsheets at least help us not to be stupid. And the numbers have to work from an Excel spreadsheet, and then we need to go serve. How many would agree with that? Is we've got to understand the numbers, but then we need to worry about the relationships. And so if a relationship needs something, I'm there. I check my energy afterwards. And as long as my energy is working, I don't worry about the finances until the end of the season. And who would agree with this statement? If I'm helping my relationships win and I'm not winning, that's not okay. And anybody who's a giver wouldn't be okay with that either. And this is why I love givers. You'll never outgive a giver. So my goal is to go find givers where I can serve them. And if I serve them and they're a giver, they're naturally going to have the law of reciprocity and want to give back. Everybody agree with that? So here's where we go with this is once you establish the right team, you have to see where your gaps are or what you're looking to do next season. So many of you have been selling real estate and you've done that at a high level. However, it's transactional income. And transactional income only has so much predictability. And this is where we have to look at leveraged income. So where we're going to move to is we're going to call what's my success code. And if I tattooed this on my hand, who thinks that I live and die by this? So we've got skill set, time on task, experimentation till we get a victory and we get confidence. So this is where we're going to come in when it comes to attraction. Who's been here for at least 2 years? Raise your hand. If you've been here for at least 2 years, there's a good chance that consistency has probably plagued you. Would anybody agree with that? As consistency with winning is key. So here's what I would like to, and Dave, tell me if I'm wrong. Are most of the people on this call still in the building phase where they're looking to kind of get to the momentum, which is this last phase of the success code?
Yep.
So anytime that I have a new success code, it only gets 3 to 5 hours a week. And here's why. We're still experimenting. So imagine going to the gym. When you first go to the gym, you can't just go and work out hard for the first 30 days because you might not even have the skill set on what works and what doesn't work. And you might be so sore that you're not apt to go back 30, 60, 90 days later. Who would agree with that statement that we've got to go in there and get the skill set? So here's what I'm proposing to everybody who's looking to grow their rev share. 5 years from now, be able to get on a call with me and give me the opportunity to say, Hank, pick any year in the last 5 years, pick any month, pick any week of that month, and I can tell you what I did for those 5 hours. And how I know this to be true is I've only spent 3 to 5 hours a week directly on EXP in the rev share building because all roads lead to EXP. So for example, you're doing a real estate transaction. Could those people end up coming to EXP? Yes. So we don't count those hours. We're just talking 3 to 5 hours specifically for building your rev share. So let's look at the math real quick. If we look at 5 hours a week, 5 times 50 is 250. 250 times 5 is 1,250. If you have 1,250 hours that you've held accountable, are you any longer experimenting? Or have you identified the activities where if I do this, it leads to this? I don't know if it's going to take you 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. It took me 18 months to recruit my first person to EXP. During that time, I was getting skill set. I was getting time on task. I was experimenting. I said, Cheryl, don't come to EXP. You're a single mom. I don't want it to hurt you. Cheryl goes, I'm a big girl. I want the stock. She came over, she closed 4 deals in the first 2 weeks. She closed 8 deals the next 30 days. Between her and Dave Fry, they closed 42 deals. And so how much confidence do you think I had when I had 2 people that I loved and cared about? They were having success. I almost said sex. For some reason, when I say success, I almost say sex. So what happened was my confidence shot through the roof, and I went from 1 agent to 95 agents in 6 months because I had the confidence and I went to momentum and I was no longer experimenting. I knew if I did this, I could do this. So Dave, you like to bet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. On some things, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to bet me any amount of money that you want from 2016. If you picked a year, a month, and a work day, I can tell you what I did every hour on the hour. Would you like to take that bet with me?
I would not take that bet with you because I know that you time blocking, baby. I
Well,
could pull back in my calendar and do the same. I could be like, here's where I was, here's what I was doing.
and here's the thing is we all get caught up in this more is the answer. I would argue that the harder you work, the luckier you get, but working hard isn't where it's going to get you to where you want to go. And this is where this tattoo comes from. Subtraction leads to multiplication. How many of you started working with buyers much like me? Well, I remember the first time a buyer called, Jeffrey Dahmer, 5 o'clock Friday night. Yeah, I'll be there. I didn't ask any questions. You know why? Because I wanted to believe that Jeffrey Dahmer was going to buy a house. And then I show up and the hair on the back of my neck stands up. And anytime you get an outcome that you don't desire, and here's another Hankism, anytime you get an outcome that you don't desire, put a new standard in place. Because when you put a new standard in place, you're less likely to get that undesirable outcome. So you go with buyers and then you show up and maybe they aren't pre-qualified. So you put a standard in place where you put some scripts in where you ask some questions and you get pretty good, but you're putting standards in place that when you have flow coming in, you have filters for it. At some point, you realize that listings are more leverage. So you subtract out buyers and you start working with more listings. Here's what I'm going to encourage everybody to do. Figure out your net life number. For my wife and I, it's 360 grand a year. As long as we make 360 grand a year, we can accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. So what we did was you bring one revenue source to that net life number, you start to raise your standards, and then you bring in a new success code. And that new success code might be revenue share. So what happened with us was we don't count a new revenue source to be viable until it hits $10,000 a month. Maybe it's $1,000 a month for you. So anytime a new success code reaches $10,000 a month, we know that we have the math in the success code to change our schedule. So I remember meeting with my accountant and my board of directors saying, okay, we've hit $10,000 a month in this success code. What should we change? And I love this question right here. And I ask myself this question probably 5 or 6 times a day. If I just continue doing what I'm doing, what is it that I don't achieve? And my accountant asked me, with spending 5 hours a week on EXP, he goes, if you continue spending just 5 hours a week, what is it that you don't achieve and what you're looking to accomplish in this? And I said, nothing. And he said this, don't change anything. Who thinks that was one of the best pieces of advice that he could ever give me? And here's why. Sometimes what we do is we identify the 20% that makes 80% of the money, and we don't stop doing the 80%. In fact, our first year in real estate, we're working all the time. We're only making 20% of the money, spending 80% of the time. And then what happens is our third year, we start having a lot more success. And then we start doing things that actually don't deliver to that success. And we end up with this roller coaster. Who can relate to that? So here's what I'm going to ask. My challenge to all of you is open up your schedule, have 5 hours a week that you hold accountable where you could defend it in court towards agent attraction. And it's just this simple. Have a call and book a call every single day. So what happens is when you have a call and book a call every single day, you get feedback. You start to get that consistency. When you have a call and book a call every single day, you don't have to think about it. And what we're looking to do is upgrade the conversations. Dave, do you remember when you reached out to me about joining EXP?
Yep.
So Dave reached out. He said, Hank, I'd love to have a call with you. I'm like, great. Who are you talking to? He said, Gene Frederick. I'm like, well, Gene's the GOAT. There's nothing that I could tell you that he hasn't already told you. I'd be happy to have a call. He goes, well, I'd still like to talk to you. Sure, no problem. So I send Dave my link and he goes, Hank, you're 3 weeks out. I was like, yeah, I'm 3 weeks out because based on my schedule, if then statements, if I have time, I'm happy to do it, but I only volunteer 10% of my time. Where do you think that 10% comes from? Tithing, right? We have models that show how much time should you tithe or hold there. Well, for me to do a free call, it was 3 weeks out. So Dave goes, well, I need to talk this week. And I'm pretty sure I sent you a link to pay me $1,000.
Yep.
And Dave was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, here's the thing is you're asking me to get off of my schedule, make time for you when I'm already booked solid. And if it's that important, I'm happy to do it. However, there's got to be an exchange because if I say yes to this, I'm saying no to something else. And Dave opted not to, and that's fine. But here's the thing is what Dave learned was I wasn't going to try to poach Dave. I was happy to give him time, but I wasn't going to say no to people that I've already said yes to, because how many of you guys have obligations to people like your family? And here's what I believe to be true. I owe it to my family. When I go to work, I work and I hold those hours accountable, so I'm not working all the time. And I remember seeing Dave, and he's introduced as the president of the company. I was like, well, Dave, time for me to, eat a little crow. Are we all right? And Dave, this is my story. But Dave was like, yeah, we're good. You were happy to give me time. You didn't try to poach me. And you gave me an option in order to talk to you. What Dave didn't know that week was I had 3 retreats in a row and I truly was slammed. And he probably called me at the worst possible time. Yet when you have standards and principles, well, people respect that.
And the time, there's only one place the time can come from, right? Because when you have other structured business meetings, it's the same thing with like, lead generation time is always the time that agents give up, or family time, personal time is what people give up, because everything else is scheduled and structured like an appointment. And if you don't treat those other things, your health, time to go work out or time to whatever, time to stop and meditate and pray or whatever you're going to do, spend time with your family, block that time off, lead generate for your business or whatever. Those are the times that everyone gives away because they don't protect it. And so when you protect it, then that's exactly what happened. So I had a lot of respect for you coming from that standpoint, even though I really wanted to talk to you. But I had a lot of respect coming from that standpoint of, hey, I've got my time structured, and I know I've been there. We've all been there. Where does your time come from? And it usually comes from things you shouldn't be trading off.
And when we get there and we get to that sort of regimen, and people say, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine being that structured. Yet here's what I'm going to encourage you. The more structured you are, the more freedom it gives you. I don't think that much. The reality is I barely graduated high school. I couldn't get into university. Yet here's what, and Dave mentioned this in the beginning of the call. When I get an outcome that I don't desire, I learn from that, and then I don't do it again. So what happens is when you can create a schedule that will get the results that you're looking for, the reality is, can you follow that schedule? So here's what I would encourage you to do. How do you make the pain of not following your schedule greater than the pain of following it? So for example, if your goal is to go and make, and let's make math easy, $120,000 in rev share. And if somebody has a calculator, please help me out here. $120,000 in revenue share. So if we take that, we divide it by 50 and then divide it by 5, what is that number?
I've got 4,800.
Yeah.
4,800. So here's what I want you to think about. That hour in your schedule is worth, actually 4,800 can't be correct. So you got 120,000 divided by 50.
I got 480.
480 sounds right. So $480. The reality is, I bet there isn't a person on this call that had a scheduled listing appointment and they missed it. Why? Because the pain of not going to that hurts them right away. And you're expecting to go get money from that. Here's the thing with revenue share. If you can keep your listing appointments for 5 years, you'll most likely now make that every year ongoing. So here's what one strategy you might use. If that number for you is $480, anytime that you have a scheduled time in your schedule to have a call or book a call, and you choose not to do that, I'm going to ask that you make the pain equivalent to that $480. Do you burn it? Do you give it to the opposite campaign and share it on social media? Something that has the pain of missing that appointment greater than doing it. I remember Glenn reached out to me a couple years back and said, hey, Hank, can you talk at 2 o'clock? And I was doing a free call for someone else's rev share line. Not that was going to do nothing for me. I said, Glenn, I have a scheduled appointment. Can you do 3 or 4? Glenn was fine with it. Who thinks I wanted to take that because it's like, oh, Glenn's reaching out to me. It feels pretty good when Glenn reaches out. It strokes your ego. It makes you feel significant. Yet here's what I know. Anytime I don't follow my schedule, I'm less likely to get the result that I'm looking for. Every single one of you have the ability to create a schedule where if you follow that schedule, the predictability of you getting the outcome that you desire is darn near 100%. And if it's not, you're going to get the feedback of experimentation where you'll get to figure out your schedule. And then if you could just follow your schedule, you get the results that you want because you're not crazy and you have people around you that can give you feedback. So how many of you, if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, you could hold 1 hour accountable a day, and in 5 years, you could reach your rev share goals, there's nothing that would stop you from doing that appointment. And yet the challenge is we're spoiled little brats. Well, Hank, I can go make $15,000 on this listing appointment, so I'm just going to go do that. And it's because you're thinking in too short term of cash flow horizons where you're taking $15,000 today one time for $15,000 consistently 5 years from now. How many of us need to start working on our mindset around our numbers so that we understand by saying no to this today, what it's actually costing us in the long run? So Dave, I've puked all over you for probably 26 minutes and I barely took a breath. What's going through your mind?
Man, I think it's such good stuff. That last point to me is really something that, I would say I always try to impress on people, right? That's always something where it's the long-term mindset. And, you've got your arrow, right? You have to pull back to go forward. And so sometimes you have to give up. You have to give up the instant gratification and put that time into something that's long-term. And the gas and the clutch on this is always figuring out how much to give up, right? Because the truth of the matter is everyone's got bills to pay. Right. So, you have to be responsible, but the worst.
I would say responsible and resourceful. Dave, I was a bold coach and 600 flights in 3 years. And when I did that, I was leaving the team leader position to get back into sales to make more money. And then Sean reached out and said, hey, we'd like you to come audition. I went from not making enough money as a team leader to making no money and paying for travel from June of 2012 to January of 2013. And then they sent me to Fargo, North Dakota. I had every credit card maxed out. I had to borrow $20,000 from my father-in-law, and talk about doing within while doing without. And Dave, you know the numbers. We'd have 40 people in that bowl. They only had 46 agents that had sold a house in the last year. Yeah. I had to do something that, knowing what I know now, was impossible. But here's the thing was, I saw the vision and I knew if I could just do within while doing without, and if I could figure it out. And that's what sometimes you have to do, is you have to be willing to be resourceful and figure it out, and figure out how long you can hold your breath, because the longer you can hold your breath, the bigger the returns are.
Yeah. And I would say you have to be responsible, but unreasonable. Right? Because, you really have to, do the things. Like, there were times when I had 1 year, I had 11 W-2s, right? When Chris and I were first married and we were first starting out and everything else, we had to pay the bills. I had 11 W-2s in 1 year, and I did my own taxes because I couldn't afford to pay anyone else to do my taxes back then. Right. And so I'm putting them together and I'm stacking up all of these W-2s and entering them. Like, I got another W-2 to enter, another one because you do what it takes to get where you're going to go, and you work whatever hours. I wouldn't want to live that lifestyle now, but at the time it was all a part of what you do. And so, if you care about the future and you need that other income, you still have to find the time to put in it to build your future. If you don't do it, it's just going to always be the future. It's never going to get here.
So if we got a few more minutes, I'd like to talk about just awareness, because I think awareness is transformational in and of itself. Get awareness. Are you in phase one? Phase one is food, shelter, and water. If you're in food, shelter, and water, you just got to work 20-hour days. We've all been there. I had a client once who was giving plasma just to stay in my coaching program, and he closed out 100 transactions in his first 2 years. Who thinks that when you're willing to give plasma to participate in something, you're all in? Phase two is where you start to get margins. When you get to phase two, you have to make the decision on how long you're going to move from phase two into phase three. And here's what I mean about that. If your net life number is $10,000 a month and you're starting to make 15, I'm going to encourage you, rather than stay at that 15 and raise your lifestyle to the 15, figure out how to get more of a leverage or consistent income, and be willing to, instead of going to phase three, which might be 20 grand, go back to that 10,000 so that you have recurring or leveraged income. So Dave, I'm throwing a lot here. How many of you are familiar with Family Tree? So on Family Tree, I was talking with my wife this morning, and we're going to give away my program called 36 to Life over a 4-week period. It's going to be Mondays at noon. I'm not sure if we're going to start next week or the following week. And that will give you the foundation of everything that we're talking about for selling real estate. All of that foundation can be translated into revenue share. And so we get the solid foundation, then we can translate it into revenue share. And we'll be able to have 4 weeks, 4 hours worth of time. And my wife and I are going to give that away. So why are we going to give that away? Here's what I know is you can't outgive what will come back to you. I believe we need a little bit of energy and a little bit of love in our company right now. So you know what? Whenever I'm feeling like that, I go and I give. And when I give, it comes back. So, oh, Dave's got my numbers. I got 11, 12, and 28 FLQA. So, yeah,
Probably
it equates
a
to,
little bit. It's a couple, it might be a month or two ago, but that's pretty close.
you know what's interesting about that, Dave? I recruited for about 18 months. And here's the difference of why I only recruited for about 18 months was I went and got strong relationships, had them win before they came over, and hardly any of my people leave. So the reality is when you build strong relationships, you do what you say you're going to do, and you help them win, you don't have to worry about them going out the back door. How many people do you think I've recruited in the last 3 years, Dave?
Last 3 years, personally, not that many.
Like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And the reason is I was at the number that I needed to be at. I wasn't willing to bring people in and then have the obligation to be able to help them or whatever it took to help them succeed. And I knew my math, and the math wasn't worth me going for more. And what I did was I poured into the people that I had to help them have the stickiness of it. And this is where I need all of you to know your numbers. So if you're going to be in my world, you'll have your taxes done on time, or the ability to have them done on time. You'll have a balance sheet. You'll have a balance sheet for the current month we're in, and you'll have a balance sheet for 6 months prior so that we can see the progress or where we need to move. Because when you know your numbers, we can decide where we're looking to go. So for example, many of us don't know what our end game is. My wife and I, we've got about a $3.9 million net worth. Well, I'm 46 or 48, 46. I'm 46. So with 10 years, that should be able to double. We don't need any more wealth because we know based on numbers that should go to 8 million and then 8 million to 16 million. That's more than enough for what we want to do. So we're no longer playing the wealth game. Now what we have to do is we need to look at building moats around that and securing that. Yet so many people don't know where they're at on their journey, and they're taking unneeded risks because more is the answer. And so one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is know what your end game is. Know what are some milestones that you're going to have to go over. The more you can understand your circumstances, the more you can build out what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to, and start refereeing your life. And it becomes so much easier to get the outcomes that you're looking for.
Yeah, Hank, in the FYR group, right? Fund Your Reason and all the concept. We talk about 2 numbers. We talk about a lot of numbers, but 2 of the numbers we talk about are, one is your freedom number, right? What is the number that replaces your active income right now? What is that break even where you can start to put your time differently, right? You got to pay your bills. You got to be so what's that number that is your freedom number? Okay. And then the next one is, what's your reason number? And your reason number, we talk about funding your reason. That's the greater good. That's the bigger, that's the long-term life and everything else. What is it? What's the amount that funds your ability to go do that? Right. So first you get to your freedom number, right? Because then you have the ability to focus on exponentially, right?
Yeah.
Adding additional income and everything else like that, right? So you get to your freedom number first, but you need to go figure out what your reason number is and then understand what creates that reason number. How do you fund it, right? So fund your reason. That's the whole concept. Like, hey, let's first get your bills paid. Let's get you on solid footing. Let's get your back taxes paid, whatever you need to do, right? Solid structure, know your numbers, have your structure, have your P&L. And then when you look at what your reason number is, now you can build a solid plan from there forward on what you're going to add in and how much. Because like you said, some people are just flailing because it's the number is just more. So it's work as hard as you can, as often as you can, because it just needs to be more. And if you have something specific and you have a timeline of when you want that to happen, then you map out the action steps and you segment your time appropriately so that you can enjoy life while you're getting there. You and I have talked about the book Die with Zero.
Oh, you know, Mitch, Rich, and Elizabeth, they're good friends of mine. And we were having a weekly call, and I asked them to read the book, and they didn't. And finally, after the third week, I said, listen, guys, you either read the book or we're no longer in a relationship moving forward, because I think this will fundamentally change how you look at things. And they did. And they're super grateful that I mean, Dave, you know me, I care more about you than I do us. And what I mean by that is I'm willing to take a stand for people and fight for their greatness. And there was one last, oh my gosh, there was one last point that I wanted to make before we left, and it completely slipped by me.
Oh man, what you were just talking about something, and I think I knew where you were going with it. We have half a brain between the two of us.
Well, here's just goes to show we're not that good looking, we're not that smart, and we've been able to have lots of success because the reality is time on task will be talent every single time. We're doing things that are reasonable, not, and I know we out of context, but we're doing things where if you can consistently do something over time, you're going to figure it out. Once you figure out your success code, it becomes easier because you're doing it with confidence. And so my cheer to all of you is don't underestimate what you can do over the next 5 years, because you overestimated what you can do in 12 months. June 22nd of 2022, I quit drinking for 3 reasons. First one is I hadn't dealt with grief before in my life, and I knew my father-in-law was about to pass, and I didn't want to numb myself. Second one was I think we were 18 years of marriage, 17 years of marriage, and my marriage wasn't where I wanted it to be. I thought we could be better. Now, there's no one that has a better marriage than me. However, I wasn't built to just be average. I wanted a great marriage, and with an empty nest coming, I thought, what is one thing that I could do that could give us a better chance? And it was stop drinking, because my wife has a bunch of alcoholism in the family, so I quit drinking. Third one is I looked at our industry, and we had the allegations and all that stuff going on. And I thought, maybe as a leader, I should be a beacon so that people don't have to go to drink at events. And it was my quiet way of just making a difference. And I can tell you, after 19 months, everything in my life was better. But I remember on the 1-year anniversary, my marriage wasn't where I wanted it to be. I was a little bummed, but then I looked back and said, my father-in-law died. My dog died, which I like my dog more than most people. My dog was my dog. And I thought, you know what would life have been like in the last 12 months if I was drinking? And I didn't have a problem. I was just consistent. I'm consistent in everything. And I thought, you know what? I probably overestimated what I can do in 12 months. Who thinks that I'm underestimating what our relationship can be like 5 years from now, because we're being that intentional on the outcomes that we're looking for? So I'm going to highly encourage you to figure out what you want and then be willing to do anything that it takes to get there, and it will be worth it.
Love that, man. I love that. Hey, you were talking about family tree. And I'd love to just real quick. Yeah, I think that's an important thing, because I want people to understand the power of that group. 10,000 agents from all different groups in there, 4 leaders, 4 alphas in there that are not in each other's lines, aligning to provide a place for everyone to win and succeed and learn. So if you can talk a little bit more about what that is and the kind of the mission, and then what people can get out of it, and then we'll talk about where to go find it, would be great.
Here's my desire behind it, and I'll be fully transparent. I haven't told too many people this. Rich was a relationship that was missing in my life. Rich and I are both busy. We have families. And unless we had a mission to go on together, it just wasn't going to work. We both had a problem, and this is nothing against our uplines, but we weren't inspired by our uplines. And John Maxwell says a level 7 leader can't follow a level 5 leader. And we were missing that kind of camaraderie. So Rich, we ended up inviting Mitch and Elizabeth. We were all kind of having that same challenge. We thought, what if we joined forces together? And we were looking to solve a problem that we all had, and we went on a mission together. So we got the skill set of the relationships. First time I met Mitch, he said an offhanded comment that I didn't like about women. And so him and I had a conversation about that. He apologized, said I drank too much, and we were good. I don't mind friction. And Mitch and I are really good friends now. So we got time on task. Through experimenting, this group has led to 10,000 people. And here's one thing I think is so great about our company. You can build something, get it off the ground, and then through collaboration, I haven't been in there but maybe 15 times in the last year, except to go in there and check because it has gained legs. And Dave, we also, you helped do the alpha group, and we had beta and we had delta and zeta and all those things. And I thought it was a great concept, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So Jesse and I said, well, what if we called it builders and leaders? And without asking for permission, what we did was we went and did a weekly call where if you had 5 FLAs, you could be on a call called the builders. Then we did the next day at the same time, the leaders, where you had to have 10. And here's what I love about this company. If there's something you don't like, look in the mirror, and then this is a tattoo that says, fix it, be part of the solution. So here's what I wanted. I wanted to actually retire someday. So I built things that could be sustainable within the company. I helped get them off the ground, and then I handed them off. The builder's call is still going. It's been what, 2 years, Dave?
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
years. And,
2 years,
corporate was more than happy to take it over when Jesse and I got it off the ground. And so here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Rather than be a victim and complain about something that's not existing or you don't like, go find a solution, start small, get some victories around it, some confidence and some momentum. Then you can hand the ball off and it can be self-sustainable. How many of you came here, not for another job, but you came here for freedom? So when you're thinking about doing things, ask yourself, how can I play the infinite game versus the finite game? And the infinite game is where it's about the greater good of the company, not about what's just in it for you. Because I can promise you this, in this company, you will never outgive one of the influencers. Never once have I reached out to an influencer and they haven't been more than willing to do whatever it is that we ask.
Yeah.
So that's where Family Tree came from. Mondays at 12 Eastern at netlifemovement.com. Either next week or the following week, I'll be doing 36 to Life, which will be 4 weeks, and it will be free. It won't be EXP puking all over it. It's just my way to go help some people and go have some fun.
Love it. Love it, man. So good. So good. Here, I'm going to take us off of here real quick. Like, boom.
Not a single swear word. That was intentional too. I've been trying to clean up my act.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it. So good job. Good job. I had my finger on the button. We've got a 7-second delay on this thing today, but we didn't need it. We didn't need it. So guys, hey, throw some love in the chat for Hank today for spending some time with us. So good. I've been watching the chats. Everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. Repeating in some of the stuff in there. So throw some love in there for Hank, guys. So glad you could hang out with us, Hank. Like, you know, the stuff that you put together, and that's what I'm talking about being analytical. You know, it's not just the study of it, but it's, you know, how things work and then putting it into a system that people can use. And, you know, if you care about other people, right? I always say the difference between a habit, if you do something, you know, you can be successful having a habit because you can do it that way all the time. It's the way I do it and it works. And I know that it works. But the difference between a habit and a system, you can't leverage or share a habit, but you can leverage or share a system. Right. And so when you take the things that work, when you've gone through life and you've learned, and you've learned the way that the best way we learn, right? We fail forward, slam our face into something one time, and hopefully we don't slam our face into it a second time. And, you know, and so, you know, but taking those things and then putting them into a lesson that can then be shared, you're constantly helping the next group of people coming behind you do it better, right? Do it faster, do it
faster,
less painfully, right? All of those things. It's like, hey, I just drove down this road and there was a tree down over here. There was a big pothole here. There was a speed trap over here. There was whatever, you know, and then you turn around and you give it to hey, you guys are getting ready to come down this road. Let me give you the lay of the land. There's a sharp bend up here. There's a whatever here, you know, here's a straightaway where you can really, you know, just stomp on the gas pedal, whatever. And then the people coming behind you can do that and can do it better. And then there's the enthusiasm of watching that group succeed at a higher level than we succeeded. And that's super cool that you do that.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the time. And if you guys need anything, here's kind of my standards when people join me. You'll never be able to say I wasn't there for you. So if you need me, reach out. Now, you'll never outproduce me. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of people work hard, but results matter. Who agrees that results matter? And I'd love nothing more than somebody in my work chart to do that. You get 3 strikes with me. The first time you waste my time, I'll educate you and just say, hey, we could have handled this at a lower level. Second time is I'll warn you. Third time, I'll never talk to you again. And that's how it's made it sustainable. So, for example, Dave, I could get Glenn Sanford on the phone right now, but if I asked Glenn something that wasn't at his level of his job title, he's not going to let me go back to the well too many times.
Yep.
And so what I'm going to encourage all of you to do in our company is solve the problem at the lowest level possible. I was just talking with Amy Weaver. And the number of things that are being thrown at her that could have been solved by just going to eXp Family Tree and asking the question is bogging her down. So here's what I'm going to ask that you do. Go into Family Tree. If someone asks a question and you can answer it, answer it. That's how we're able to get huge momentum, is when we're solving things at the lowest level possible so that we can free up our leaders like Amy Weaver and Sean and all of them to stay in their lane, especially with our brokers. I believe that's our Achilles heel, and anything that you can do to take pressure off of our brokers or our staff, I think that allows us to go 100 miles an hour faster, because there's only specific things that Amy Weaver could do that, 89,900 people, other people can't. Yep. So how many of you will work with me to solve things at the lowest level possible, which means that we're directing people back and helping them be resourceful, because if you're not resourceful in this company, you're going to slow us down.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much crowdsourcing. That's the great thing about our platform. There's so many places to go, and we've got our FYR workplace group, right? So it's an incredible place to go back and get and to chat with this group and get the resources, get the answers that you need. You have your state groups with the workplace groups in there where you can jump in there, and other agents in the state that have been out there before you know the answers can answer it for you. So lots of different levels. There's places all over workplace and in other spots where you can go. And of course you can pop into eXp World, which if you guys haven't seen it, exp.world, go in, create your new avatar. That's the new web-based eXp World, which is pretty awesome, but lots and lots of play. You could literally, when you port in, there's an information desk right in front of you, and you can walk up and be like, where do I go for this answer? And they'll go right here, click on the go-to menu. Your avatar ports there, and you're talking to a live person who can answer all your questions. The resources are all over the place. Sometimes we just go to we go all the way to the top because we know, well, that person has all the answers. We're going right there. So I love that. Awesome.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, my man. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Thanks for pouring into the group. Super, super excited. Guys, now your responsibility is to take the ball and run with it, right? You get handed the information, you get handed all the stuff to do. Let's go get it done. Let's go have some fun.
Have a call, book a call. It's simple. It's not easy.
There you go.
Ball.
Love it.
Bye, everybody.
All right, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Happy Fire Friday. We'll see ya.